Welcome back to Middle Eastern Crisis. I'm your host, Nestle Hannah Erishkin, and let's get started. So today we'll be talking about the Sharia. And so you might have heard about this in the news, specifically talking about Afghanistan, saying, oh, they're going to reinstate the Sharia law, which they did. However, we need to change how we talk about the Sharia and what is Sharia law and what is considered Sharia. A lot of times we talk about the Sharia law almost as if it's this homogenous set of laws. However, it's actually not. There's actually different schools of thought about the Sharia law and what constitutes into it. But simply put, the Sharia is just Islamic law, which is made out of 4 sources. The first being the Quran, which is the holy book for Muslims. It was believed to be written at the time of during Muhammad's life, when he started to get messages from God about starting a new religion of his own. So the second is the Sunnah, which is the life of the Prophet, because they believe if he was chosen to be the Prophet, then he must be an extremely holy man, and his life was exemplary and must be modeled by other Muslims who want to follow Islam. The third is Qiyas, which is the analog, which is pretty much just anecdotal evidence about like Muhammad and around just like different figures of his life. And the next is Imja, which is the consensus of the community, which is the community laws. So the Sharia is based off of these. It's pretty much based off of sacred sources like the Quran and the Sunnah. However, there are various interpretations along Muslim scholars and just like the Islamic leaders of what is the right interpretation of all these laws. And so there's a lot of differing opinions around it. And also a lot of the Sharia is borrowed off of local custom and legal tradition in those communities and was just adapted. And over time, in itself, it became sacred. However, it was not a part of the Quran. In itself, it was just something that was adopted from the community who converted to Islam. And so we have to think about that when we're talking about Sharia and we're talking about it in different communities, we have to realize the nuances behind it, that it's not this black and white issue, not this like perfectly written out code of conduct. I think that's why a lot of people think of Islam as a legalistic religion, because there is the Sharia law. Why do I keep calling it the Sharia law? Sharia means law, like, okay, the Sharia. But yeah, so there's a lot of differing opinions around it. So the Sharia law is also not a single law. It's actually a group. It's not even a law. It's just even though I named out sources, it's actually just legal opinion. It's actually common law. If you ever took like a law class or like a British history class around law, you might have heard of something called common law. They're not like written down laws, but they're like case law, or so they're like the laws that have been created around like actual life. Like they've been created because of other cases and traditions, and so there's this different type of legal opinion known as fatwas. And so like the Sharia today, as it has been evolved, is actually in the modern sense is just a set of lifestyle practices. And so it covers like rituals and religious practice, like prayers, alms, pilgrimage, diets, and food prohibitions. So it's not like this black and white of like, if you do this, you have to do this sentence. I mean, in certain legal thoughts, there are those consequences, but in general, it's just a code of conduct. Of course, depending on the community, the how they enact Sharia law and how they use it and how they think about it, it could differ greatly. But yeah, there's not this like black and white thing, and it's actually has to do a lot with what is actually explicitly expressed within the Sharia is actually not to do with like, if you shoplift, you need to do this sentence. It actually relates more to family matters and personal status, kind of more of those interpersonal relations. But once again, Sharia is not homogenous. There are, like I said, if you shoplift there or do something bad, like any just wrongdoing, there are certain Sharia law mind frames that in practices that do have consequences for those actions, and that are incorporated within the Sharia law and not within the community law, because those are two different things. But yeah, there are rules for civil and commercial transactions and ideas of what penalties should be prescribed for those things that relate for civil transactions and family and familiar and personal interactions within the community. But saying all that, saying that there are penalties, isn't really the full frame of mind, because the Sharia is, if you're going to have there's a totem pole of laws, Sharia's second, because the first one is saying the state and government and state law, whatever, where you're at, the laws, you have to follow those first. So that's kind of something you also need to change your mind. I know we're going into midterm season, so I'm not going to get political, but you'll definitely see ads if it's a Muslim person who's campaigning. They're oh, they're going to enact Sharia law, and it's actually no, that would be kind of impossible. I mean they technically could invoke aspects of Sharia law, but Sharia law is actually just the religious law for the religious community, and there are laws for the community as a whole, but those are separate from Sharia law. But yeah, so there is a lot of ambiguity and a lot of gray territory when it comes to Sharia, because it differs so much between community to community, and even within communities there are differences. So hopefully that helps you guys when you hear the word Sharia and hear people talking about it, either in the news or if you're in a Middle East or Islamic history class. If you know more about it than I do, because I definitely don't know everything, please just comment it below. But until next time, keep on reading.